Amazon presents Jeff versus Taco Truck Salsa. Whether it's Verde, Roja, or the orange one. For Jeff, trying any salsa is like playing Russian roulette with a flamethrower. Luckily, Jeff saved with Amazon and stocked up on antacids, ginger tea, and milk. Habanero? More like habanero, yes. Save the everyday with Amazon.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg,
essayist and commentator Eric Levine,
and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the New York State Republican Party and the County Chair of the Suffolk County Party on Long Island. With us is our good friend, co-host, noted attorney, commentator, essayist, Eric Levine, and I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. And we're honored and privileged today to have Congressman Joe Cunningham, who is a member of Congress from Charleston, South Carolina. He's just written a new book. It's a very important book. It's called Life of the Party, How the Democrats Lost America's Trust and How They Can Win It Back. So I'll do my usual riff, which is I'm the House Democrat, Eric Levine.
That's a lie.
We'll do his panned response that that's not true. Jesse will say neutral, and I'll rely on Eric's wife to back my play. This is my problem, Joe, with the Democratic Party. I think it's been wrong on a lot of issues for a long time. It's the so-called 80-20 issues, and I'll let you address that. And just today, as we're taping with Eric and with Jesse, Congressman, there's been a leak of the so-called 2024 autopsy, which the Democratic National Committee tried to bottle up, but they're getting such flack about it that they had to release it or leak. Some of it was leaked. And the interesting thing is they're trying to blame it all on Jill Biden monopolizing all the research and all the polling and trying to protect her husband's efforts to run for a re-election. So I want to get your thoughts on just the thesis, the premise of your book, how our party, the Democratic Party, has lost its way, and what are the issues that they have to get their heads together on if they're really going to be a party that represents the American people. So, Congressman, your turn.
Well, Judge, I appreciate you having me on. That's a lot to unpack, and I think it may take more than 15 minutes and more than a couple of beers to get to the bottom of all that.
Well, then we'll bring you back. We'll bring you back.
I'm going to give it the old college try here. The DNC, up until today, refused to release the autopsy from 2024. But the good news is I think I pretty well diagnosed it in my new book called Life of the Party. And it's online, lifeofthepartybook.com. And I wrote this book. I've been working on this for a number of years. I wrote this book as a lifelong Southern Democrat. I live and breathe around folks who vote for Trump consistently. I understand why people have turned away from the Democratic Party. And so much of it of the book and the problems, of course, is the trust has been breached. And, of course, it was breached with Joe Biden running for re-election when he said that he would not. I was the first national Democrat to come on TV and say that he should not run for re-election. The party told Democrats not to believe what they saw with their eyes or heard with their own ears. So our trust was breached during this past election cycle. And so we have to win that trust back and earn the respect of voters again before launching into the policies and the ideas and the vision. Because as we all know, you're not going to be sold on anything unless you actually trust the messenger or the party that's attempting to sell that. So this book is blunt. It's honest. It's told from somebody who says the quiet things out loud. But I do it out of place for love for the Democratic Party, because, again, as a lifelong Southern Democrat, I grew up in Western Kentucky. I've seen what the big ideas and the bold visions of the Democratic Party can do for working class Americans, and I know what it can be again, but we've got a lot to fix in the meantime in order to get back.
Eric.
So welcome, Congressman. So you talk about messengers. Who are the Democratic messengers? Zohran Mamdani, AOC, Bernie Sanders, Graham Plattner, Abdul El Sayed, Jew haters all, anti-American all, communists all. So if these are the messengers of the Democratic Party, where are you? Seems to me the Democratic Party is a dead carcass that's been filled by the DSA. Why am I wrong?
Well, you're wrong in thinking that there is a leader of the Democratic Party when it's apparent there isn't. You saw from the elections last couple nights that the Republican Party sure does have a leader, and people must kowtow to him. Otherwise, they face being ousted. And so that's become a loyalty test within the Republican Party, where it doesn't matter about values or vision. As long as you pledge your allegiance to President Trump, that's what ensures your survival. That's not present in the Democratic Party. In the next couple of years, I think there's going to be a lot of shifting within the party itself as to what that leadership actually looks like. But there's some repair work to be done, and that's certain. But starting that is earning back the trust of American people, acknowledging what has gone wrong and how priorities have been misplaced over the last number of years, and getting back to focusing on American people and working voters and tackling those issues. But look, there's a recent poll that came out recently showing that Democrats still have a 11-point advantage over Republicans. That tells you, I think, a lot on the job that President Trump is doing and how he's not being able to connect with people about his vision. I say that, but hey, I'm a equal party offender here. I say that and knowing that the Democratic favorability is in the 20s. Now, imagine the success that the Democratic Party could enjoy if it had a brand that was intact. And that comes back to the reason why I wrote this book is ideas on how we can repair the brand so that we can be competitive. And look, I understand the party of the role of a county chairman or state chairman and to go out and root for your team. But everybody, even Republicans, should want a competitive Democratic Party.
So let me
tie a bow on this. If you want just a one-party system, there are other countries you can move to where you can enjoy that. And let me tell you, you're not going to enjoy it.
Yeah, we both agree that the country's best served if you have a strong center-left and a strong center-right party and a two-party system. I agree with that. But putting aside the specific messenger issue, with the exception of John Fetterman and maybe Josh Gottheimer, everyone who runs for office in the Democratic Party, everyone, at some point in time, in order to get ahead in the party, either has to condemn Israel or be an outright anti-Semite. Or you have some people that are just too gutless to speak up to them, and that would be Chuck Schumer. But I have every candidate that's running for president, even though no one's declared yet, but we know who they are. They're all putting distance between themselves and Israel. They're all feeding into the lie of a genocide, apartheid, colonial occupying power. This is all garbage, of course. And you have outright anti-Semites like Zohran Mamdani that are endorsed by Hakeem Jeffries and Kathy Hochul, and there's silence from everyone else on the issue of his anti-Semitism. So whether or not there's a specific messenger, I'm talking about the specific message of anti-Semitism, which seems to be a consistent thread. You have Graham Plattner, who's running for senator in Maine. He's going to be he is your nominee. He has an SS tattoo. Nobody seems to care. Everyone just explains that away. So will you concede that the Democratic Party has an anti-Semitism problem that needs to be remedied?
James Carville just said that.
I think there's anti-Semitism runs on both sides.
I'm sorry. No. I'm sorry. That is a cop-out. No, I'm not. I'm sorry, Richard. That is a cop-out. I'm asking specifically about the Democratic Party. I will say right now, here and now, Tucker Carlson is an anti-Semite. I want him out of the Republican Party, and no Republican candidate should seek his endorsement. Will you say the same thing about Zohran Mamdani? Will you say the same thing about Graham Plattner? Will you say the same thing about AOC or Bernie Sanders?
Can I answer the question?
Well, you didn't let me ask it, but now I have. Go ahead.
Okay. I condemn anti-Semitism at every turn. You mentioned the name Josh Gottheimer, one of my best friends from Congress, who I worked out with every single morning. You'd be hard-pressed. You go back and you look at my voting record, you'd be hard-pressed to find any Democrat that had more support for the state of Israel.
You are not a current candidate. I am talking about current candidates. No, I can't let you get away with that. I am talking about current candidates. Current candidates.
Let me finish. Again, you look at my record. You look at my support for Israel. Israel is an American ally, and they need to be supported. And we need to call out anti-Semitism at every single turn. There is a difference between condemning Israel, condemning the Jewish population, and also being critical of the prime minister. Those are two different things. You can condemn or criticize the prime minister of Israel without being anti-Semitic. That's a fact. You can have disagreements with President Trump or President Obama and still be pro-American. Those are facts. All right. So it'll be the voters to decide as to which candidates they want. I condemn anti-Semitism. I call it out when I see it. I don't have a problem with it. I know Josh Gottheimer does as well. I think we all should. We should call out racism and sexism when they exist.
Okay, here's a fact. Here's a fact. Zoran Mamdani does not believe the Jewish state of Israel has a right to exist. Is that anti-Semitism?
I believe the Jewish state does have a right to exist.
Is that anti-Semitism?
Yeah, it appears to be anti-Semitic at a whole state of a population. Yeah, that's not directed towards the prime minister.
So
but look, that's up to Graham Plattner is in Maine. That's up to the people of Maine to decide. Your question is, are these comments? And you're talking about a tattoo that Graham Plattner doesn't currently have. He had removed, to my knowledge. Reporters, I think, should ask them about their specific views, and people can vote accordingly on that. The Republicans have made, comments about different races or religions, still been elected. Some of them have been defeated.
Okay, so the DSA, the DSA with Chairman.
No. Excuse me. I would challenge you though to impugn an entire party based upon comments or offhand comments about certain individuals.
These are not offhand. These are not offhand comments.
You're getting some troubled waters here.
No, not at all. Let me finish my question. Let me follow up.
No. You interrupt. No. Excuse me. You had me off the guest, and you continue to interrupt me. You come south of Mason-Dixon line, we can teach you a few different manners on how to treat your guest, but do not impugn an entire party or entire brand based on individual comments, because I think you have to look yourself in the mirror and take a look at President Trump and what he says and what he does every day.
Yeah, there's been no stronger supporter for the state of Israel than President Trump. Right, but let me just ask one more question. I want to ask one more question. So the chairman of the DNC, Mr. Martin, believes that the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, are an important part of the Democratic agenda, of their big tent. The DSA does not believe the Jewish state of Israel has a right to exist. Do you think that portion of the party is anti-Semitic?
I'm not a socialist. I'm not part of the DSA. I'm a capitalist.
Okay. That wasn't my question, but okay.
All right. Jesse.
Congressman, how are you? I'm sorry. I was just trying to pick up all these pieces and such here. But I just want to pick up on what Eric is saying. Number one, I do believe that a strong two-party system is good for competition because it gives us a campaign of ideas. And regardless of anything else, we've seen that, in my case, it's been too easy to beat up the Democrats now with the way the DSA has been leading them both locally at the state level and throughout the national level. But let's just go back first a little bit through your book and then as we speak about the autopsy. There's been conspiracy theories about why the autopsy has not been released. At first it was supposed to be in October, then it was supposed to be in November by the Democratic National Committee. Now it was leaked out because it was not released. The problem is here, I guess we all see with the Democrats, is that Number one, there is no leadership. Number two, there is no guiding force. Number three, there's no guiding principles. The guiding principles that have been moving forward have been those of a socialist, Democrat-led wing, far-left extreme wing, that has really plummeted your party into all-time lows. Now, of course, we can't condemn one person or another on their comments and whatnot, but we can condemn when the leader of the Senate Democrats has routinely been stating anti-American rhetoric, anti-capitalistic founding fathers rhetoric, and has been someone that has not been a supporter of Israel, despite the fact that he shares the same faith. So what I ask is, Democrats like yourself, the Blue Dog Democrats that I grew up with, don't exist anymore. So with your book, despite your book, and with this autopsy that's been leaked and such, where is the future of the Democratic Party, and does it have one, or is the future of the Democratic Party its present, which is a socialistic far-wing extreme group?
What I write about in this book is how a small minority, like what you're referring to, would be Mondami or someone else, garners a significant amount of press and attention. And they should not be the leaders. They should not be projected as the majority of the Democratic Party. Let me just, I have statistics in there. Let's take, one of these cultural issues, for example. Trans athletes playing in women's sports. The Democratic Party has been branded as being supportive of that, but when you dive into the facts and to the numbers, the vast majority of the Democratic Party are against it. Now, you have the extremes being the most vocal within the party, so that's the problem. And why is that? I believe that a lot of it comes back to gerrymandering. I believe that over 90% of our congressional races remain uncompetitive in the general election. I don't think anybody understands that better than you guys up in New York either. I mean, you guys had your case that got struck down by the, when Democrats overreached up in New York, and it got struck down by your state Supreme Court. When you eliminate competition in the general election, we've seen it time and time again. You have these candidates who either run to the far left or far right of their respective parties, because that's how they win the primary. And they don't have to worry about pivoting back to the center. They don't have to worry about getting swing voters or moderates or independents. And so those are who serves in Washington, D.C. You get some moderates occasionally that come in there on a wave year. The district I won was a Trump plus 13 district. But those come and go. So I think both parties often get painted by their most extreme. And as you know, you all are in media, same loudest extreme and sometimes offensive things are what gets you on late night television. That's what gets the tweets and the followers, and those get packaged up into fundraising emails, and it's a cycle that perpetuates itself, all leading back to self-preservation for these politicians.
Well, I just need to I can see where you want to go with that in your book, but the facts of the matter are that the top elected Democrat in the country, Chuck Schumer, is part of that extreme group. He extols those extreme rhetoric, including allowing boys to play in women's sports. And the mayor of the largest city on the globe is spouting the same rhetoric, and they're governing that way. So I think that your fringe is now the majority in your party.
I respectfully disagree, and it goes back to the purpose why I wrote the book in the first place. When you disagree, and look, I've paid the price politically. I can tell you again, being the first Democrat to come out and say that Biden shouldn't run for re-election, being the first Democrat to say
that took courage, and I just want to. I agree with you. That took courage. Say, you don't get any friends, and I understand why more people don't do that. And to answer your broader question, there's such a disconnect between where our elected representatives are and where the general public is, especially where the average Democrat. I'm in South Carolina, right? And the black Democratic voters in the state of South Carolina are typically the most conservative Democrats there are, much more conservative than white Democrats.
if the National Democratic Party were more in line there with cultural issues, I think the party would enjoy a lot more success. But, you have to get back to the question as to how is it that 73% of Americans thought that Biden should not run for re-election, but you had essentially zero representatives saying that publicly? And what kind of system is that where courage is not rewarded, but it's actually penalized? And that gets into a broader discussion about it. But drawing back to the book, the reason I wrote this book is because I do care about the party. I do believe that it has gone astray. I do believe that there are certain factions that have hijacked it, that have become the loudest voices, and they've been incorrect on certain stances, whether it be Israel, whether it be cultural issues and things like that. And look, I'm just a guy that's doing what I can in order to try to bring the party back so we can have a competitive system that brings out the best ideas, the best policies for the country we love.
Well, Congressman Cunningham, I have to say, I'm very pleased to have met you. I think you're the future, not only of the Democratic Party, but I think you're also the future of the country, because I believe you're absolutely correct, and Eric and Jesse and I all agree, you have to have a competitive two-party system. It should be a party of center-left and center-right on each side. We should not have the radical extremists of the left or the right control the party. People should be speaking out with courage and with vigor to try to do the right thing. We have to live in this country and bring it forth for generations to come so it's secure, it's protected, it's a land of opportunity. And I think your book is a very important step in that regard. It's good to know that there's still common sense Democrats alive and well. It gives me hope for my party and for the country. The name of the book is Life of the Party, How Democrats Lost America's Trust, How They Can Win It. And I look forward to your success on the book and your success in elective office in the future. If someone wants to get the book, how can they get it?
They can go online at lifeofthepartybook.com, or it's also on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, other places you can find your books. And again, I'm grateful for the conversation, grateful for the opportunity. I can tell you, speaking to a Republican in New York, probably feels the same ills that a Democrat in South Carolina feels, and understands the systemic hurdles, I guess, whether it be through gerrymandering, or here in South Carolina, we got straight ticket voting, where you walk into a ballot box and the first question they ask you is, you want to vote Democrat or Republican? And so if you're running for local office, you don't get considered. The person just comes in and votes for the party, which, again, doesn't benefit our country, and it just benefits the political machine. But look, there's a lot of work to do. I actually think there's a lot of things that Americans agree on across party lines. I'm for term limits. I'm for age limits. I think we need new blood in politics. And I still believe this is the greatest country on earth. And the idea is, how do we improve it and leave it in better hands for our kids than how we inherited it from our parents.
Well, Congressman, on that, we all agree that this is the greatest country on earth, and it deserves better leadership on both sides of the aisle, and that it's very important for the center to hold.
Thanks again, Congressman Joe Cunningham, author of the new book, and I hope it's a bestseller, Life of the Party, How Democrats Lost America's Trust, How They Can Win It Back. It's a great pleasure to meet you, and look forward to meeting you live and in person and having you back on the show. Thank you for joining us today.
Likewise. Y'all enjoy your Memorial Day weekend, and remember the reason.
Thanks again, Congressman.
Let the Record Show is on the air. This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg,
essayist and commentator Eric Levine,
and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show. Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the New York State Republican Party and the County Chair of the Suffolk County Party out on Long Island. With us is noted attorney, commentator, essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. So, after that quiet, understated first segment, led off by our esteemed colleague, Eric Levine, who's going back down south to learn some manners. You
talk about learning manners. It's just rude when you ask a question. If you ask, do you know the national anthem, and someone starts humming Dixie, that's the wrong answer.
Okay, listen. In defense of Congressman Cunningham, I think his heart and his head are in the right place.
Right,
it's tough being
no question.
It's tough being a blue dog Democrat because they don't exist anymore. It cost him his seat in the House. He ran for the governorship of South Carolina. Didn't help him there either.
Yeah, but if you can't acknowledge that the Democratic Party is an anti-Semitism problem, you're kind of whistling in the dark.
Which is why I made the reference, if you notice, to Carville. Even Carville recognizes that.
And he didn't seem to acknowledge that.
He should have bet. I agree with you. Okay, switching gears. And maybe, Jesse, you and I will be lucky we won't be confronted with a searing cross-examination of Eric Levine, Esquire.
Don't insult me.
Okay, moving on. I told you should have been in the studio today with the gag. All right. Iran. So as I was coming into the studio, there seemed to be reports that there's going to be some sort of announcement today. Whether that's true, it's one of the 8 million, we're on the brink of a deal. This was supposed to be coming out from Iranian public television. Who knows what they were going to say? The last thing I heard is they were saying no to virtually everything. They can keep their enriched uranium. They're not going to stop doing research for atomic weaponry. It's their right. They want to control the state of Hormuz. That's what I heard yesterday. God knows what we'll hear today. Whether there's a deal, I always concerned about no deal is far, far better than a bad deal. My own view, which I share with General Jack Keane and General Kellogg, is you have to have regime change. Without regime change, these Islamist, fundamentalist, radical crazies will come back after us, that you can't trust them. Whatever paper they sign, whatever they pledge to do, they will break it. It's part of their culture, part of their political culture, part of the religious culture, that it's okay to lie and to misrepresent. So I'm very concerned about a so-called deal. I didn't like the comment that Trump made, by the way, where he says, Netanyahu do what I tell him. Netanyahu has his own country to protect against existential threat. I'm not a big fan of telling the state of Israel that you have to accept nuclear weapons on the part of Iran because they will use it. As Eric always says, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is you'll have the mushroom cloud over Jerusalem, then it'll be moving on to Europe and then to the United States. So I'm very concerned about what this breaking news is or is not. But I'm more concerned about going into a bad deal, and I'm more concerned that Trump is being played. He keeps giving them more time. They're consolidating the power. They're executing their opponents. The Revolutionary Guard has the real command position vis-a-vis even the mullahs. They have their own little mafia there where they control the economy, the banks, the finance, the industry. This is a bad regime that has to be changed. And if we don't have a change, we're doomed to repeat the same old over the last 47 years. Eric.
Yeah, so it's hard to know. I mean, if we continue on the same trajectory of threatening action and doing nothing, just saying we're close to a deal, and then again threatening act, and then don't get a deal, and then threaten. We look weak and pathetic, and that doesn't help anyone, and we'll end up in a worse place than when we started. I still am of belief that we're going to get kinetic. There will be additional military strikes. There will be overwhelming military strikes. I really think that's our only option. I agree with you, Richard. The regime change is essential. I would not take too much from this Trump statement that Netanyahu will do what I tell him to do for a couple of reasons. One is that every time someone in the press reports that there's separation and strain between the prime minister and the president, lo and behold, a few days later, there's a military strike, and we find out that this is all part of a ruse. So it's really impossible to know exactly what's going on. But I agree with if the trajectory is what it has been for the last couple of weeks of threatening action doing
6 weeks,
a few weeks, 6 weeks of threatening action, doing nothing, and saying we're close to a deal, that does not bode well. I have to believe. I find it very difficult to believe when Trump was saying that he was an hour away, but he didn't do it because of the Gulf states asked him to hold off. Look, the United Arab Emirates, which was one of those states which supposedly asked the president not to attack, has absorbed more ballistic missile attacks than the Israelis have. And what is being underreported, if it's reported at all, is that the UAE has been conducting military strikes inside Iran. So I find it difficult to believe that the UAE has been asking the United States to restrain itself and to restrain Israel in the hopes of making a deal. If we've learned nothing about this regime, they're never giving up their nuclear program. And anyone who believes that they will are just deluding themselves. And the only way to do away with the program is to do away with the regime.
Jesse.
So I was just making sure you guys heard my keyboard so that it interrupted Eric before he beat you up or anybody else up again.
The man's unrestrained.
Exactly.
I am being unduly assaulted here.
We start the assault early this week on Tuesday, so it doesn't matter.
That's correct.
Let's talk about the Yankees series. We can do that if you'd like.
No, we could talk about the great speech.
We can talk about the Mets. We can talk about the Mets losing a 5-run lead. We could do that too.
We could talk about the great speech that the three of us heard at the state Republican event the other night when Governor DeSantis spoke without notes, without a teleprompter, and gave one of the best speeches I've ever heard. Intelligent, informed, linear. He just knocked my socks off. Terrific.
I completely agree. It was terrific. And I will tell you that Bruce Blakeman was just as good.
I agree. Blakeman was terrific.
Governor for governor.
Best speech I ever saw Bruce Blakeman give. Absolutely.
Exactly. And so, but let's go back to this subject matter. I think that it's unfortunate that, we're going to be right or we're going to be wrong when we air on Sunday morning because of the announcements coming forward on the day that we
or we could be both right and wrong.
Well, the only announcement I heard was that he made an announcement with Lee Zeldin regarding some of the climate issues.
Yeah, that's a different discussion.
That's a different discussion. I haven't heard anything that there's going to be an announcement about Iran.
No, but that wasn't him. It was supposed to be coming from Iran radio.
Iran radio. Iran radio.
Right. Okay, Jesse, don't let
death to Israel, death to America.
Yeah.
There's Iran radio.
Will they say it or not?
Yeah, we
can do that ourselves.
Yeah, I think that let's go back to the original segment. I think all three of us will agree one thing: Republicans, conservatives, Democrats, that there is no greater friend to Israel than President Donald Trump. He has demonstrated that in his first term, and he has certainly demonstrated that in his second term, in the first 2 years of his second term. And I'm confident he's going to continue that during the end of his term. With the discussions with these two national leaders, these two nations, these two allies have been in lockstep. You are both right. There are those who want to try and trip these two leaders up, this alliance up, but it has not been successful. I also agree that we're going to hit, we're not going to hit. You don't want to give this type of regime who tries to sniff out weakness, indecision. I do not believe that President Donald Trump, is indecisive or will ever project any type of weakness. I do believe that he will lay out the cards, and he is demonstrating in a diplomatic manner with those Gulf states that he does listen, because he's not a warmonger, but he has constantly said one thing, several things. The regime's got to go, and even more than that, he says Iran cannot have nuclear weapons or the capabilities, enrichment or otherwise. So I believe in my core that the media and those reporting out there in the mainstream or in the conspiracy theories try to jam up the works, confuse the issue. But when it comes to true action, this president leads first with his fists. He does promote, project, and execute. He's a living embodiment of peace through strength. And one way or another, this is going to come to an end. It's going to come to an end shortly. It's either going to come to an end on the terms the United States and Israel lay out for Iran, or it's going to end badly for the regime and those in charge of Iran.
Well, the one thing we don't want to have happen is there's a deal, and we just declare it's a great deal, irrespective of how horrible it may be. I mean, that's the Obama approach.
Spinning the message.
Yeah, that's the Obama approach. The only way there's a great deal is if Iran, if the regime gives up its nuclear program, allows the United States to remove and take possession of the nuclear dust, as Trump likes to refer to it. They agree and and it can be monitored that they no longer fund terrorist organizations around the Middle East and around the globe, and they limit their ballistic missile system. That means there's been regime change, because this regime is not capable of doing that. So call me very, very, very skeptical of being able to reach a deal with this regime. And Jesse, I hope you are right, from your mouth to God's ears, as they say, that this is going to be dealt with and it's going to result in those three goals.
Well, let's switch gears. Let's talk about Cuba. So since the last time we were together, gentlemen, there's been an indictment by a grand jury in the United States of Raul Castro. And the indictment alleges both a conspiracy and murder of civilian planes, killing the pilots, unarmed civilian planes, which was on an aid mission to Cuba. People talked about it for years, and they repressed the conversation. Nobody seemed to bring it up, but to the credit of President Trump and the Justice Department and Secretary of State Rubio, they never forgot what happened, and they rallied to bring justice to those families who lost loved ones because of the act of that villainous regime, the Castro communist regime in Cuba. So the question becomes, and I will ask Jesse this first, what's next? Again, I go back to the fact that you got to get the Castroites out of control of Cuba. Cuba was a great country before. It can be a great country again. Russia has just announced they're going to back Cuba, whatever that means. I don't know how they can't even back themselves, because it seems that the tide is turning a little bit, at least against the Russians in the Ukrainian war that they launched, that the Russians launched. So I don't know what they think they're going to be doing. But the Monroe Doctrine is clear about foreign interference in our hemisphere. Trump is doing the right thing. He's taken out Maduro. He seems to have Rodriguez under control, though I'd like to see her gone too, because she's a part of Maduro clique. But I want to see free elections and a democratic regime there and a pro-American regime there. I want to see the same thing in Cuba. We've waited a long time. It's been a long time since 1960. We've waited a long time for freedom for the people of Cuba and to have a friend and ally in Cuba. What are your thoughts, Jesse?
Well, I appreciate that. For those listeners who don't know, my father, I'm a Cuban Rican. My father's Cuban, my mother's Puerto Rican, but more importantly, I'm American. And they instilled that in me. Back in 1960, before the Castro regime took place, my father saw that and defected to the United States, leaving his family behind, unfortunately, because they did not want to come. He saw what was happening there, and he fled 90 miles to the north to seek peace, liberty, freedoms, and opportunity. And the Cuban people, like the entire Latin community, we are a people of faith, family, hard work, and probably some of the best entrepreneurs you ever find. We have a deep-seated commitment to our community. What has happened in the time is that families have been broken apart. Some families have not seen each other in decades or if ever again as a result of the communist and socialist regime that's controlled Cuba. What has just happened is that there's been an indictment against the former president, but he's still in charge, Raul Castro, who's Raul Castro and such. And that gives us hope. That gives us hope because the economic conditions in Cuba are so dire. The people are beginning to rise, as they all did in the early days of the Iran, where the economy was driving the people to rise up against their dictators and their mullahs and all this such. That's happening in Cuba. And I have to tell you, while there has been no stronger defender and executor and implementer of the Monroe Doctrine in decades, maybe even since its inception, or since John F. Kennedy, or President John F. Kennedy, than President Donald Trump. And that's why people now refer to it as the Donroe Doctrine. what he's done in Cuba, what he's doing in Cuba by isolating it, by trying to empower the people there, and also making very clear statements that they may be next, that what happened in Venezuela could happen to them. And let's not forget, the Maduro military was backed by Cuban operatives, by Cuban military, and they were wiped out in one of the most impressive military efforts of special operators that we have ever seen. It was done quietly, it was done efficiently, and without any bloodshed of American lives. And it achieved all its objectives. The people, the leaders, the dictators of Cuba in Havana and wherever they're squirreled away need to understand that. They, I believe, understand that a reckoning is coming. Having Guantanamo there and having some of the best fighting Marines in the world that has ever been bred also serves as a deterrent and as a warning that this is about to happen. I think in this case, the American military and President Trump's policies are assisting more the Cuban people because of the presence of Guantanamo and because we share, a strait of 90 miles between Florida's Keys and the tip of Cuba. This is going to be one of the most resounding moments in the history that will hopefully, as a Cuban American, will see finally a free Cuba. My father only lived it for a little bit during his time. I have never seen a free Cuba. I hope that my son, who just graduated college, will see a free Cuba so that he can step on those beaches and on those roads and retrack his steps of his family.
Well, I think that's very well said. Thank you, Jesse. We have to take a break. This is Left the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, essayist, and cross-examiner Eric Levine. I am Judge Richard
What do you mean
Weinberg.
by that? What do you mean by that?
I'll explain to you in a week. We'll be back in about a few moments with our final segment of this week's Left the Record Show. Please stay tuned for our final segment with more important and interesting conversation.
This is Let the Record Show. This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg,
Essayist and commentator Eric Levine,
and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine, and I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We have a few minutes left in today's show, and let me tell you something I just can't believe I heard. There's a woman running for Congress in Texas.
Texas 35th Congressional District.
Okay. And she announces...
Maureen Galindo.
And she announces, I don't know how viable candidate she is.
She's one of the top two candidates. She's in the runoff in the primary next week.
And is this a House seat that leans Republican, Democrat? Do we know anything about that?
I believe it's a seat that leans Republican.
Okay. So what does she do to rally her troops in the Democratic Party to follow up on Eric and Jesse's great concern about the anti-Semitism rampant in the Democratic Party and the resounding silence of the Democrats to call it out? This woman's running for Congress, and her latest brilliant idea is that American Zionists.
No, I'll read the quote. Let's read the quote. Let's read the quote.
Hold on, let me just say it, and then we'll read your quote. American Zionists fundamentally should be rounded up and put in intern camps and prisons because of their support of the state of Israel. And then she made this other charge that anyway they should be put in prison because most of them are child abusers and they should be castrated. So number one, the American Jewish community and, by the way, the Christian community who supports Israel, American Zionists all, and anybody affiliated with them, they're all child molesters and they should be castrated. This is the reasonable, common sense view of the Democratic Party in the 35th District of Texas.
Yeah, so let's get the quote. So Galinda said, quote, "Let's turn Carnes ICE Detention Center into a prison for American Zionists and former ICE officers for human trafficking. It will also be a castration processing center for pedophiles which will probably be most of the Zionists, close quote. Now,
how do you deal with that?
Okay, well, let's first analyze how we get here. How far a step is that from people accusing Israel of committing Zionists of committing a genocide, Zionists of being occupying power, Zionists of engaging in apartheid? It's really not that far a step, because Zionists are Nazis. Netanyahu is a Nazi. So, of course, you wouldn't want to defeat these horrible people. But what I find most interesting is the people who are now accusing her of being an anti-Semite. Like AOC is saying that this is anti-Semitism. Well, I'm sorry. Galindo is specifically saying that she's not an anti-Semite, she's an anti-Zionist. And isn't it always like Mamdani's position and AOC's position and Bernie Sanders' position that there's a difference between being an anti-Zionist and being an anti-Semite? So aren't they really making our point that there is no difference between the two? Because she's never said, let's round up Jews. She said, let's round up Zionists, as if there's a distinction between the two. A lot of them, by
the way, are Christians.
Yeah, well, yes, but they're not saying she's being anti-Christian or anti-evangelical or anti-born again or anti-Baptist.
Anybody who supports Israel.
Anyone supports Israel, right?
But
they're accusing her of being anti-Semitic because she is saying she is being an anti-Zionist. So it really makes our point that there is no difference between being anti-Zionist and anti-Semitic. So, but you look at the people that have accepted or been willing to make this false argument about the distinction between Zionism and being anti-Semitic. Of course, you have Zohran Mamdani. Look, anybody who thinks that Zohran Mamdani is not an anti-Semite is not sensate. I mean, that's just really the point. But you have mainstream Democrats like Hakeem Jeffries, who wants to be Speaker of the House, Kathy Hochul, who's the governor of the state of New York, having endorsed Mamdani without taking issue or without explaining why they separate from him on the anti-Semitism issue. So when you have these mainstream Democrats, the people who are supposedly the moderates, buying into this farce, buying into this lie, that it's okay to be anti-Zionist and to accuse Israel of committing a genocide, to accuse Israel of being apartheid, without criticizing it, it is really not that far a step for someone to say, well, shouldn't we round up these criminals? Shouldn't we start punishing these criminals? And that's how we end up with the Galindos of the world. And she will not be alone if the Democrats don't start dealing with their anti-Semitism issue. And that's why I took such issue with the congressman in the first segment. It was like pulling teeth. I don't even think he got there to be able to admit that the Democratic Party has an anti-Semitism issue. And if someone is as centrist as he claims he is, and is arguing for the Democratic Party to come back to the center, an inability to articulate and say, yes, we have an anti-Semitism problem, and we must deal with it by dealing with the issue by saying, but I'm not an anti-Semite, I support Israel. That really isn't the point. We're talking about the party writ large. And this is what you get when you mainstream anti-Semitism, as the Democratic Party has. You end up with crazy people like Maureen Galindo, and you mainstream and you make it okay for her to say this stuff, and then to come back and accuse her of being anti-Semitic. Some of these people like AOC really have to start looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, "Look, maybe I'm really helping the Democratic Party get there."
Well, gentlemen, thank you again for another interesting show. I wish everyone a wonderful holiday this weekend. It's Memorial Day. Let's not forget people who gave the ultimate to protect this country so we have freedom, liberty, opportunity, that we're judged on the content of our character, not on our religion or the color on our skin.
And may God protect our troops in harm's way in the Middle East.
And absolutely. So God bless you, God bless your families, and always God bless America. We look forward to being back with you again next week on Let the Record Show. Thank you for listening.